In this new war, the most important source of information on where the terrorists are hiding and what they are planning is the terrorists themselves. His lawyers challenged the legality of the military commission system. The information we get from these detainees is corroborated by intelligence and we have received from other sources. And together, this intelligence has helped us connect the dots and stop attacks before they occur. Information from the Terrorist Questionnaires program helped unravel plots in terrorist cells in Europe and in other places. It's helped our allies protect their people from deadly enemies. This program has been and remains one of the most vital tools in our war against the terrorists. It is invaluable to America and to our allies. Were it not for this program, our intelligence community believes that Al-Qaeda and its allies would have succeeded in launching another attack against the American homeland. Were it not for this program, our intelligence community believes that Al-Qaeda and its allies would have succeeded in launching another attack against the American homeland. So I'm announcing today that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Abu Zubaydah, Ramzi bin al-Shibh, and 11 other terrorists in CIA custody have been transferred to the United States Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay. They are being held in the custody of the Department of Defense. As soon as Congress acts to authorize the military commissions I have proposed, the men our intelligence officials believe orchestrated the deaths of nearly 3,000 Americans on September the 11th, 2001, can face justice.
After the September 11th attacks, there is a dramatic increase in the frequency of U.S. requested renditions. Officially, the original purpose of renditions was to bring suspected foreign criminals, such as drug kingpins, to justice. But after September 11th, it is used predominantly to arrest and detain foreign nationals designated as suspected terrorists and bring them to foreign countries that are willing to hold them indefinitely for future questioning and without public proceedings. According to one CIA officer interviewed by the Washington Post, after September 11th, the whole idea becomes a corruption of renditions. It is not rendition to justice, it's kidnapping. There was a debate after 9/11 about how to make people disappear, a former intelligence official will later tell the New York Times. But by the end of 2002, the number of terrorism suspects sent to foreign countries is in the thousands. Many of the renditions involve captives from the U.S. operations in Afghanistan. The countries receiving the rendited suspects are often known for human rights violations like Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Morocco, all of which have histories of using torture and other methods of interrogation that are not legal in the United States. The rendition program often ignores local and international extradition laws. In fact, U.S. officials have admitted that the justification for rendition is sometimes fabricated. The U.S. requests that a suspect be rendered, and then the allied foreign government charges the person with a crime of some sort. After a suspect is relocated to another country, U.S. intelligence agents may remain closely involved in the interrogations, sometimes even doing them together with the foreign government's intelligence service. The level of cooperation with Saudi interrogators is allegedly high. In some cases, according to one official, we're able to observe through one-way mirrors the live investigations. In others, we get summaries. We will feed questions to their investigators. He adds, however, they're still very much in control. Joint intelligence task forces, which consist of members from the CIA, FBI, and some other U.S. law enforcement agencies, allegedly controlled to a large extent the approximately 800 terrorism suspects detained in Saudi Arabia. On September 15, 2001, President Bush meets with his advisors at Camp David for a day of intensive discussions about how to respond to the 9/11 attacks. CIA Director George Tenet had arrived there with a briefcase stuffed with top secret documents and plans in many respects, the culmination of more than 4 years of work on bin Laden, the Al-Qaeda network, and worldwide terrorism. With him is his deputy, John McLaughlin, and counterterrorism chief Cofer Black. Also in the conference room with them, among others, are Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, Dick Cheney, and Colin Powell. For his 30-minute presentation, Tenet gives out a briefing packet entitled Going to War. His presentation covers several key components for the fight against terrorism. One, Tenet advocates substantially stepping up direct support of the Northern Alliance, the main Afghan opposition group, as part of a strategy to create a Northern Front, closing the safe haven of Afghanistan. His idea is that Afghan opposition forces aided by the United States would move first against the northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif, trying to break the Taliban's group in the city and open up the border with Uzbekistan. From there, the campaign could move to other cities in the north. Tenet also explains that the CIA had begun working with a number of tribal leaders in the south of Afghanistan the previous year, and they could be enticed to join a U.S.-led campaign. Two, the plan includes a full-scale covert attack on the financial underpinnings of the terrorist network Al-Qaeda, including clandestine computer surveillance and electronic eavesdropping to locate the assets of Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. Three, the CIA and FBI will work together to track down bin Laden supporters in the United States. Four, a key proposal is a recommendation that the president give the CIA exceptional authorities to destroy Al-Qaeda. Tenet wants a broad intelligence order allowing the agency to conduct covert operations without requiring formal approval for each specific operation, thus authorizing it to operate without restraint. Tenet and his senior deputies would be permitted to approve snatch operations abroad. Journalist Bob Woodward calls this truly exceptional power. Five, Tenet has with him a draft of presidential intelligence order, a finding that would give the CIA power to use the full range of covert instruments, including deadly force. Six, another proposal. With additional hundreds of millions of dollars for new covert action, the CIA could buy intelligence services of key Arab nations, including Egypt, Jordan, and Algeria. They could act as surrogates for the U.S., and as Bob Woodward points out, this would put the United States in league with questionable intelligence services, some of them with dreadful human rights records. Some had reputations for ruthlessness and using torture to obtain confessions. Seven, Tenet calls for the initiation of intelligence contact with certain rogue states, such as Libya and Syria, so as to obtain helpful information about the terrorists. Subsequently, by 2002, Syria will have emerged as one of the CIA's most effective allies in their fight against Al-Qaeda. Eight, Tenet has with him a top secret document called the Worldwide Attack Matrix. This details covert operations in 80 countries that he is recommending or are already underway. Actions range from routine propaganda to lethal covert action in preparation for military attacks. Bob Woodward described this proposal a striking departure for U.S. policy. It would give the CIA the broadest and most lethal authority in its history. The president, after hearing this, is much pleased with Tenet's proposals, virtually shouting, "Great job." He will grant all Tenet's requests by the following Monday. And Tenet have presented a much cruder version of the CIA plan to the White House just 2 days earlier. September 17, 2001, President Bush signs a directive giving the CIA the authority to kill or capture suspected Al-Qaeda members and to set up global network of secret detention facilities called black sites. The International Committee of the Red Cross will later call the sites a hidden global internet network designed for secret detentions, interrogations, and ultimately torture. At least 100 prisoners will be remanded to the secret system of extraordinary rendition. The network will have its own fleet of aircraft and relatively standardized transfer procedures. The directive, known as a Memorandum of Notification, will become the foundation for the CIA's secret prison program. The directive does not spell out specific guidelines for interrogations, but Bush also approves a secret high-value target list containing about 24 names, given the CIA executive and legal authority to either kill or capture those on the list. The president is not required to approve each name added to the list, and the CIA does not need presidential approval for specific attacks. Further, a presidential finding gives the CIA broad authority to capture or kill terrorists not on the list. The list is merely the CIA's primary focus, and the CIA will use these authorities to hunt for al-Qaeda leaders in Afghanistan and elsewhere. October 21st, 2001, a Washington Post article hints at the U.S. government's use of rendition and torture. It refers to 4 suspects out of the hundreds arrested in the United States: Zacarias Moussaoui, Nabil al-Marab, Ayub Ali Khan, and Mohammed Asmath, who may actually have links to al-Qaeda. The article quotes an experienced FBI agent involved in the investigation who says, "We are known for humanitarian treatment, so basically we are stuck. Usually there is some incentive, some angle to play. What can you do for them? But it could get to that spot where we could go to procedure, where we won't have a choice, and we are probably getting there." The article goes on to mention, among the alternative strategies under discussion are using drugs or pressure tactics, such as those employed occasionally by Israeli interrogators to extract information. Another idea is extraditing the suspects to allied countries where security services sometimes employ threats to family members or resort to torture. Although it is little known in the U.S. at the time, the CIA has already been renditioning suspects to countries known for practicing torture and has made arrangements with NATO countries to increase the number of renditions. Asmath and Khan will later be cleared of al-Qaeda ties and released. Al-Marab will be deported to Syria under mysterious circumstances and rearrested by the Syrian government. Moussaoui will be sentenced to life in prison on May 3rd, 2006. On October 23rd, 2001, John Yoo, a Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel, and OLC Special Counsel Robert Delahunty issue a joint memo to White House counsel Alberto Gonzales. The memo claims that President Bush has sweeping extra-constitutional powers to order military strikes inside the United States if he says the strikes are against suspected terrorist targets. In the days following the 9/11 attacks, Gonzales asks if Bush could legally order the military to combat potential terrorist activity within the U.S. The memo is first revealed to exist 7 years later on April 2nd, 2008, after future OLC head Stephen Bradbury acknowledges its existence to the American Civil Liberties Union. It will be released 2 months after the Bush administration leaves the White House. You and Delahunty's memo goes far past the stationing of troops to keep watch at airports and around sensitive locations. Instead, the memo says that Bush can order the military to conduct raids or terrorist cells inside the U.S. and even to seize property. The law has recognized that force may be legitimately used in self-defense. Reuters will later write, the U.S. military could have kicked in doors to raid a suspected terrorist cell in the U.S. without a warrant. We do not think that a military commander carrying out a raid on a terrorist cell would be required to demonstrate probable cause or obtain a warrant. You and Delahunty would later write. The United States government creates a multi-layered international system of detention centers and prison camps for suspected terrorists, enemy combatants, and prisoners of war that detained and interrogated throughout the years of 2001 and 2004. The Washington Post would later report in May of 2004, the largely hidden array includes 3 systems that only rarely overlap: the Pentagon-run network of prisons, jails, and holding facilities in Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo, and elsewhere. Small and secret CIA-run facilities where top al-Qaeda and other figures are kept, and interrogation rooms of foreign intelligence services, some with documented records of torture, to which the U.S. government delivers or renders mid or low-level terrorism suspects for questioning. The detainees have no conventional legal rights, no access to a lawyer, no chance for an impartial hearing, and no apparent guarantee of humane treatment according to prisoners of war under the Geneva Convention. One administration official would later tell the New York Times that some high-level detainees may be even held indefinitely. Secrecy permeates the system. For example, renditions are done covertly, and the locations of the secret CIA-run interrogation centers are considered so sensitive that even the four leaders of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees who are briefed on all covert operations do not know them. In May of 2004, it is estimated that there are over 10,000 prisoners being held in U.S. facilities around the world. November 8th, 2001, the Los Angeles Times publishes an op-ed piece by Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, arguing that the use of torture should be permissible in situations where an imminent large-scale threat against human life can be averted by forcibly obtaining intelligence from an uncooperative suspect. Dershowitz reasons that in such ticking time bomb scenarios, a judge should be able to provide torture warrants, given the FBI authorization to employ specific forms of non-lethal physical pressure to compel a suspect who had been granted immunity from prosecution to talk. He also says that since there is no doubt that torture would be used in such cases anyway, it should be regulated. He would later write, if we are to have torture, it should be authorized by the law. And most importantly, November 13th, 2001, President Bush issues a 3-page executive order authorizing the creation of military commissions to try non-citizens alleged to be involved in international terrorism. The president will decide which defendants will be tried by military commissions. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld will appoint each panel and set its rules and procedures, including the level of proof needed for a conviction. A 2/3 vote is needed to convict a defendant and impose a sentence, including life imprisonment or death. Only the president or the Secretary of Defense has the authority to overturn a decision. There is no provision for an appeal to U.S. civil courts, foreign courts, or international tribunals, nor does the order specify how many judges are to preside on a tribunal or what qualifications they must have. The order also adopts a rule of evidence stemming from the 1942 Supreme Court case of United States versus Quirin that says evidence shall be admitted as would have probative value to a reasonable person. This rule, according to Judge Evan J. Wallach, was repeatedly used in World War II and in the post-war tribunals to admit evidence of a quality or obtained in a manner which would make it inadmissible under the rules of evidence in both courts of the United States or court-martials conducted by the armed forces of the United States. Evidence derived from torture, for example, could theoretically be admitted. It should be noted that the order is unprecedented among presidential directives in what it takes away some individuals' most basic rights while claiming to have the power of law, with the U.S. Congress not having been so much as consulted. Bush's executive order contains few specifics about how the commissions will actually function. Bush will delegate that task to Rumsfeld, although, as with the order itself, White House lawyers will actually make the decision to put Rumsfeld in charge, and Bush will merely sign off on the decision. During the next few years, lawyers will battle over the exact proceedings of the trials before military commissions, with many of the military lawyers arguing for more rights for their defendants, and with Defense Department Chief Counsel William J. Haynes and Justice Department and White House lawyers, including Alberto Gonzales and Vice Presidential Counsel David Addington, taking a more restrictive line. Both National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice and Secretary of State Colin Powell were left outside of the circle during the drafting of this directive. Rice is reportedly angry about not being informed. National Security Council legal advisor John Bellinger will later call the authorization a process failure with serious long-term consequences. The rest was history.